Today, we invite you to consider the arrival of joy.
Good morning. Man, it is bustling in here. I love it. Well, my name's Caleb. Would you stand with us? We're going to sing some carols this morning. Said the night wind to the little lamb, and do you see what I see? Way up in the sky, little lamb, and do you see what I see? A star, dancing in the night with a tail as big as a kite. He said the little lamb to the shepherd boy, do you hear what I hear? Ringing through the sky, shepherd boy, and do you hear what I hear? A song, high above the trees with a voice as big as the sea. Said the shepherd boy to the mighty king, and do you know what I know? In your palace walls, mighty king, and do you know what I know? A child shivers in the cold. Let us bring him silver and gold. Said the king to the people everywhere, listen to what I say. Pray for peace, people everywhere, listen to what I say. A child, sleeping in the night, he will bring us goodness and light. The child, sleeping in the night, he will bring us goodness and light.
will strengthen consolation, hope of all the earth thou art, dear desire of every nation, joy of every longing heart, dear desire of every nation, joy of every longing heart.
Oh, it's so good to be here this morning with you. There's still some people trickling in, so if you got a spot and you can scooch in, that's appreciated. But we're going to take a moment here to invite our kids to their time of community. So your teachers will be up here front, the leaders, as you can go down with them. And we'll sing the song of blessing over them as they go. May God give you eyes to see all that is good, all that is good. The courage for anything. May you be strong, may you be strong. May God give you ears to hear their loving voice, speaking all around, all around, indeed, inside.
You can have a seat as the kids head down. See you later, guys. Have fun. Bye. See ya. Hi, Winona. Hello. My name's Micah. Oh, I was told by my our producer in the back. No, we don't have a producer. That's a joke. If you can scoot to the edge or the center at all, that'd be helpful. There are some people still in the back looking for seats, and as always, there are seats up front. You get closer to the action there. Couple of things we want to let you know about in terms of announcements. The first of which is if you're new to Awaken, really glad you're here. Welcome. We'd love to know that you were, so if you'd like us to know that, there are some cards in the seat pockets in front of you or the pews. You can also go online to our website and fill that newcomer card out. Somebody from our team will invite you to a beverage of your choice, and we can kind of go from there. Related to Advent and Christmas, there's a couple of things that you need to know about. The first of which is there is a youth group Christmas party this Wednesday night, December the 18th. I think that's 6:30, if I'm not mistaken. So if that applies to you or anyone you love, you can make your way there or get them there. Lots of fun with Trevor and the crew. Trevor, how you doing? Great. We have Christmas Eve gatherings here at Awaken. We've got 3 of them this year, so 1, 3, and 5, a little different than normal. And if you could let us know when you're coming, that would be really helpful for us. If everybody decides to come at 3, then we'll have to make some adjustments and arrangements for that. If everybody kind of spreads out over the 3, then, great. But we don't know. So if you could let us know that, that would be really, really helpful for us. And then connected to that, if you're able to, we usually like 40 or 50 people volunteer their time to help make Christmas Eve happen, which is a huge gift, and we would love to feed those folks as they're here. So if you're able to make a meal, soup or a hot dish or crock pot of something, and bring that, that would be much appreciated. You can find links for that and sign up for it in the Awaken Weekly and online or on the app. And then finally, December the 29th, so between Christmas Eve and New Year's, we tend to like to give a little gift to our staff and give them that week off. This is a huge push. Many of us were here late last night for the concert, which was awesome. How many of you were here for the Sandra and Sarah concert? So good. Last one in this building, man. I was in the back all weepy, crying back there. But it was a really sweet night. So we like to give that gift of just a week off after a really intense season. So if you show up on the December 29th, like, God bless you, you'll get stars and points and crowns, jewels in your crown, but we will not be here. So go play Frisbee or walk around in the park or something, So that's that. That's all for announcements. Many of you know, during Advent, we often have connected with our series, an edition of artists that we asked to create around the themes of Advent. And so we have the privilege of hearing from Phoenicia Gamble this morning. So if you would, please welcome her, our Advent artist for this morning.
Hi, I'm Phoenicia, and I will be doing a monologue from Mary's perspective. I'm out of breath. Maybe that's just because I walked 85 miles. I'm learning how to breathe. You'd think I'd know how, but my cousin showed me I don't. Apparently I hold it in too much. I've got to let it out. Breathe and drink water, she says. You're drinking for two now. She's crazy, the good kind. She's also a mother. My cousin Elizabeth, the old woman, a new mother of a beautiful baby boy. A miracle. God's doing a new thing. He spoke to me, to us. I didn't know if it was him at first, but I hoped. Elizabeth says it was an angel. Hers was an angel. How would she know? I miss her already. How am I going to do this without her? I'll forget how to breathe. I'll turn blue. The last 3 months with her have been beautiful, a blessing, a wonder. Getting to watch our bellies grow together and God's promise come to life in her, in me. And what could Zechariah do but sit there and watch? 2 pregnant ladies and a mute husband, that's a recipe for a good time. I've always believed miracles could happen, but to see one, that's why I stayed, to see, to be convinced. But here I am, already doubting. I don't know what to think of all this, but my heart says yes. That's why I came here, to be reassured. This is where the angel spoke to me. I was so afraid. I still am. I've had 3 months to prepare a speech for Joseph. I don't have one. The last 85 miles have been hard, but the last few steps home will be even harder. Joseph is kind, he's strong, and he's silent. And I just sometimes want to know if there's a storm brewing under those clouds. I don't know what he'll say, but I pray he says yes. Oh, he moved. Hello. Hello in there. You thirsty? Let's just sit here for a second together and just breathe. Thank you.
Thank you, Phoenicia. I had this experience first hour as well, but hearing that story from a young woman, it's like, oh, that's right. They were real. people. I have a bunch of high schoolers. By the way, I had surgery on my hip if you weren't here last week. I'm doing fine. I get the stitches out this week. Okay, moving on. I have a bunch of high schoolers in my house, and you watch high school romance. You go to the basketball game or whatever, and you see these kids that are like together, and they just think, I don't know what they think about the world, but like this would have been Mary and Joseph, like that kind of young. It's wild to think about. So, welcome to Advent, everybody. This is week 3. We're in a series called Awaken the Waiting, and we're wondering if we might be open to what God has for us in this journey, but also awake, like locked in, as the kids say, to what is God, like can we tune in our hearts and our minds and our ears and our eyes to be able to see and sense and hear what God is up to and what God might want to say to us. This is the beginning of the liturgical calendar, if you didn't know that. In the Christian tradition, there is a calendar by which we kind of remember the whole story in a year, and this is like the beginning. And so in the stillness, in the darkness, before anything happens, we wait. And our longings and our hopes and our desires and what we dream about are all kind of there, raw and honest, hopefully. We've looked at darkness in the first week, where we wondered about if darkness isn't always bad, but sometimes it's just dark. It's part of the process. It's part of normal human life. And God is found in those places, in those wombs of preparation, drawing out life and light and goodness and fullness and sight, to be able to perceive and see this is who God is. So can we trust God in the midst of our darkness? Last week we looked at crying out and how the Bible begins with Genesis, but many of the Jewish scholars think that the Bible begins with Exodus. And if that's true, then the story begins with a group of people who cry out to God. And we find God hearing, listening, like remembering, seeing, knowing these people. And so can we, in our moments of desperation, be honest enough to cry out and say, God, I need you. I can't do it. I need you. Help. And where is God in the midst of that? Today I want to spend a little bit of time thinking about waiting. What does it mean to wait? So we're going to be in the book of Acts. If you have your Bibles, I'd invite you to turn there. My friend Charlie is going to read the passage for us. So I would invite you to stand in body or in spirit for Acts chapter 7, verses 20 to 34.
At that time, Moses was born, and he was no ordinary child. For 3 months, he was cared for by his family. When he was placed outside, Pharaoh's daughter took him and brought him up as her own son. Moses was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was powerful in speech and action. When Moses was 40 years old, he decided to visit his own people, the Israelites. He saw one of them being mistreated by an Egyptian. So he went to his defense and avenged him by killing the Egyptian. Moses thought that his own people would realize that God was using him to rescue them, but they did not. The next day, Moses came upon 2 Israelites who were fighting. He tried to reconcile them by saying, "Men, you are brothers. Why do you want to hurt each other?" But the man who was mistreating the other pushed Moses aside and said, "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian yesterday?" When Moses heard this, he fled to Midian, where he settled as a foreigner and had 2 sons. After 40 years had passed, an angel appeared to Moses in the flames of a burning bush in the desert near Mount Sinai. When he saw this, he was amazed at the sight. As he went over to get a closer look, he heard the Lord say, "I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." Moses trembled with fear and did not dare to look. Then the Lord said to him, "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. I have indeed seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I have heard their groaning and have come down to set them free. Now come, I will send you back to Egypt."
Join me in a word of prayer. God, as we take some time to think about this story and this person, Moses, and his life, which involved so much waiting, may you be found, would you be found in our lives, near, in the midst of our waiting, that we might find you faithful, kind, compassionate, generous, bringing life. I pray in the strong name of Jesus and by the power of the Spirit. The church said together, amen. You may be seated. It's interesting, this is the book of Acts, and yet we get like a synopsis of Moses' life in the story of Acts. Luke is the author of the Gospel of Luke, but he's also the author of the second chapter, or the second volume of his story, which is the book of Acts. And in it, we find this bit about Moses. So I want you just to try to imagine with me for a moment, like Moses' life, right? It's often split up into 3 sections of 40 years. So for the first 40 years of his life, he's adopted into, is born a Hebrew, but is adopted by an Egyptian family. He grows up in the house of the most powerful person on the planet, in the most powerful empire on the planet at the time. So imagine, like, you have everything you could ever want at your disposal. All the best food, education, technology, power. Like, Moses has it all. And this is how he grows up. He grows to be a young man, and he's given a position of power. He has a place in Pharaoh's court, we find in the book of Exodus. And he, at some point, realizes that, like, oh, these Hebrews who are enslaved are actually my people. And the story reminds us that he comes to the aid of one of his countrymen, one of his brothers, and ends up killing an Egyptian who's oppressing and beating one of his brothers. At which point he leaves. So this is the first 40 years of his life. Grows up in the house of the most powerful person on planet Earth. From there, he goes to Midian. So if you were to drive up Highway 65 and pick some random town that no one will ever remember, that's like Midian, okay? So that's where he ends up. He meets some girl at a well, marries her, and then he's living with his father-in-law. So, like, you know, as an adult, living with your parents is one thing, but like living in your in-laws' basement is another level of that thing. You know what I'm saying? In Nowheresville, up 65, like call it East Bethel or I don't know. And then he's a shepherd, you know? Like, shepherds this is not a profession that people wake up and are like, I'm going to be a shepherd. Like, it's a common thing because it's an agricultural setting where there's livestock and whatnot, but it's nothing anyone sought out to be. So he goes from having everything all the way at the top of the ladder to the very bottom. Luke has a line in there that is sort of a throwaway. It says that Moses moved to Midian and was a foreigner. He's a refugee. He's a nobody in a new culture, in a new place, knowing no one. Like, you couldn't get further. First 40 years, second 40 years. He spends 40 more years out there in the desert as a shepherd before he gets, like, his calling. You know, in church world, we talk about, oh, you know, I'm called to ministry. I'm called to be a pastor. When I was 7 years old, I heard from the Lord. I was called to be in ministry. I wasn't. I backed into this, really. It's kind of like one day I was sitting here, I'm like, how did this happen? How did I get here? But, you know, we talk about calling, or my friends and colleagues talk about calling, and people feel like they were called to this. You know, like this is what they were meant to do. And I don't know what that version is outside of the church world, because this is all I've ever known as church world. Like maybe your destiny, you know, your personal legend if you've read The Alchemist. But it takes him 80 years to figure out what to do with his life. Any of you young folks here, you know, who are like chomping at the bit, all anxious and bent out of shape because you don't know what to do with your life, take a beat, okay? 80 years before he figures out, like, this is what I'm supposed to do with my life. And then the next 40 years, the last 40 years of his life, is spent wandering around the desert with these people that are stiff-necked and bothersome at times and complain and quarrel on their way to the promised land. So Moses' life is a whole series of waitings. And it's the holidays. I don't know if you've been to the grocery store lately. Gosh, it's like a test case, you walk in and you just watch people lose their minds. You like get to you get to this checkout line and somebody's up there and they are not talented at their job, you know what I mean? And they're just like, they could give a rip about how long it's taking to push each thing past the beep, beep. And like as the beeps go slower and slower, like you can just feel the energy in the checkout line rising. People are getting closer, like encroaching on one another, exasperated sighs, aimed at the checkout clerk. Do you know what I'm talking about? We hate to wait, even at the grocery store. I think you could build a pretty strong case that there is a through line in the Bible. It's just a bunch of people who end up waiting for things. Moses being the prime example. Joseph waited like 13 years from slavery to being like the head of Pharaoh's household. Abraham waited 25 years from the time he was promised. Sarah could be included in that too. They waited 25 years from promise to birth of Isaac. Jesus himself, 30 years before he started doing anything. Simeon and Anna, two of my favorites in the Gospel of Luke, right? These two old timers just like sitting at the temple, waiting for the consolation and the redemption of Israel. On and on. Samuel, Hannah, Noah, Hagar, David, Zechariah, Elizabeth. They're all waiting. And it seems like we in our lives are waiting on things too. All kinds of things. So either we come to peace with, this is going to just happen, this is part of the deal, or we keep like banging our heads against the proverbial wall trying to beat this thing and figure out how to not wait so much. This morning, I want to ask two questions. Like, what does waiting expose? When we have to wait, when we find ourselves in seasons of waiting, what gets exposed in that? And then what does it produce in us? Is there anything good that comes from it? I think that there is. A caveat before I jump into that, and I want to just say that I recognize, like, when we gather in a place like this, the waitings that are present in this room are many and varied. That they are not the same. They are not one size fits all. They're complicated. And for some of you, it's been a year, and for some of you, it's been 5 years, and for some of you, it's been 20 years of waiting. For some of you, it's been your whole life. And I want to say that I want to offer what I think is wisdom from the scriptures and from life and what it means to be in these places and walk the spiritual road together. And I may say something to you this morning, or I may say something that you're like, I don't know if that really fits me. That's fair. You're free to do that. They say like chew the meat and spit out the bones. You can do that all the time with me, okay? Every week, chew the meat, spit out the bones. There's going to be all kinds of things that maybe don't apply, and that's just the way it goes, because I'm one guy, and my waiting is not your waiting, and your waiting is not my waiting. So my wondering is there something for you this morning? Is the Spirit of God at work, speaking, moving? I believe that it is. So let's lean in and listen. What does waiting expose in us? I don't think I have to convince you or work hard to say that waiting, when we wait, it exposes things in us. Like just tell a child no or wait, and it's just like, immediately things come up. So what comes up? You and I, we're adults. We're the masters of disguise and covering things up. But I think if you get close enough, when we have to wait, stuff comes up. And I'll say for me in my own life, I've noticed a couple of themes. When I have to wait, what comes up quickly and often is what I'm afraid of and what I fear. Many times that has been, do I have what it takes? Can I do this? My experience has been this is a masculine question, not solely, but many men find themselves asking, like, do I have what it takes? Which is connected to our fathers and that relationship and all the things, which is why we all need therapists. But do I have what it takes to do this thing? Honestly, if I'm being honest, I took a really long time to decide to plant a church because I didn't think I did. And I was afraid. And in that waiting period, that's what came up. Which leads to what's my level of trust in the people that I'm in relationship with and the divine that I'm in relationship with? Do I trust God? Is there a lack of trust? Or what does that trust relationship look like? When pressed, those are some of the things that come to mind. Because when I'm waiting and it's not happening, I have to trust someone else, don't I? Like something or someone or a group of people outside of myself to help make this thing come to be. And that is a vulnerable place to be. It exposes my fear and what I trust, but then also my desire to control things. And I'm sure I'm the only one in the room, but when things aren't going my way and I have to wait on things, I'm quick to step in and start flipping levers and dials and switches, right? To try to move this thing along because I want to have some control. Because when I don't, I experience stress and anxiety. That's pretty human. And when we wait, these are things that rise to the surface, whether it's our fear or our lack of trust or our level of trust or our desire to control things. These are things that pop up. I think it also exposes our motives. When we have to wait for something, I remember when I had to wait to date my wife. Well, then my girlfriend, but now my wife. So Laura, my wife, when I met her, I quickly found out, I went to a dance, and I was standing there, putting out the vibe at the dance, and she walked up to me and she said, "Hi, my name's Laura, would you like to dance?" And I was just totally dumbfounded, just starstruck, wow. And I was like, this is something I would like to pursue seriously. I quickly found out that there was another person involved, another guy somewhere in the scene, and the embers of that little fire were not yet cold. You know what I'm saying? So I said to her, listen, I'm just here to be your friend. I'll love you as a friend, just support you along the way. 5 months, you guys, 5 months. Do you remember when you were in love, when you were falling in love? That is a really long time to not unrequited love. And it was very clear what my motives were. Push come to shove, I was in this guy, he's got to go. Or when we first started Awaken, and this still happens sometimes, people would come up to me and be like, "Micah, man, just love the church, love the mission, love the vision, love the values, love to play in the worship band. Love what we're doing here, all in at Awaken. Think I have a gift of communication. What do you think about me preaching?" And I'd be like, I'll tell you what, man, I'm so excited that you're excited. And these chairs, they do not stack themselves. And every week, they have to be stacked and unstacked. So let's do that. You see these Corona buckets on these tables? When we get here in the morning, they're filled with stuff from the bar. And when they have to be taken out, and we got to put our stuff in them every week. And then at the end, that has to be taken out, and everything else has to be put back in. So how about we start with that? We've had this phrase that developed. We call it, "Let's walk before we run." And you all know what happens, right? It's "Oh, yeah, cool. All right, I'll be back next week." And then, call time, who shows? Not them. Because when we have to wait for something, it exposes our motivation. Why do we want the thing? Oh, there it is. There you are. So waiting exposes our motives, but also it shows us and it invites us into sometimes it's just not time yet. And this is terrible. When you were a kid and you wanted something really bad and your parents said not yet, you're just come on, seriously? If I could move, I'd kick something right now. And then your next question is well, when? But when? I'm 47. I'm not the oldest person in the room, but I'm falling apart here. I've learned a few things along the way, and I'm learning the wisdom of not yet. Sometimes it's just not yet. And it doesn't mean you did something dumb or stupid or you made a mistake or someone's trying to punish you. There are seasons in our life for a reason. And there are rhythms in life, in the spiritual life especially, on purpose. Because sometimes we need to just come back around before we pass go. Sometimes we need to heal a little bit more. Sometimes we need to grow and learn some things before the next. Sometimes we need to rest before the next thing that's coming. And so not yet is just not yet. Which brings us kind of like into the deep end of the pool. When you hear, especially when we're talking about our relationship with God, when we hear not yet, is God good? Does God know when it's time? And is that God good? And if so, can we be a little more gentle with ourselves in the waiting? I don't know about you, but I've beaten myself up when it's not happening. Because I think, like Taylor Swift, I'm the problem, it's me. Right? Can we be gentle with ourselves in the waiting? Sometimes it's just not yet. Doesn't mean not never, just not yet. And that might be unsatisfactory for you to hear, and it's like, that really bothers me. It's still true. Sometimes it exposes that we don't see it all. We don't have the whole picture. And this is really easy with kids, like when they ask you for something and you're like, trust me, you do not want that thing to happen. Or maybe you mentor somebody young in their career and they're like, I want this thing. And you're like, no, you do not want that because you can't see what I see 20 years down the road. That will not actually serve you. And again, that person is not your enemy. In fact, that person is a gift to you because we don't see it all the time. There's this passage in the book of Daniel where Daniel's praying, God, come, save us, do something. And this angel says to Daniel, Daniel, we have heard your prayers, all of them, and I was sent immediately to come to your aid. But I was delayed for 21 days by the prince of Persia. Who's the prince of Persia? I have no idea. And it gives me a lot of questions about spiritual warfare and how does that all even work? I don't know. But it highlights this reality that there is a realm that I don't have privilege to. Do you know what I'm saying? There are things going on. There are things happening in the world from my perspective that I just do not see. And so sometimes when I have to wait, it's just because I don't see it all. So, wherever you find yourself this morning, whatever your waiting looks like, a reminder that when we're really digging into the spiritual life and we want to live this thing out well and we want to lean into it, when we wait, a lot of things are happening there. Are we afraid of anything? Does it bring anything up? Is there any lack of trust that you're finding? Is there a motivation that maybe needs to be checked? This is the hard work of doing the spiritual life well. Waiting is not your enemy. It actually can be a gift. I'm not saying it isn't hard, and there aren't tears, because there are, and anger, maybe even throwing things or swearing. Fine, it's all there, right? It's hard work, really hard work. And it's not all bad. What does it produce in us? Does anything happen in us when we wait? I want to suggest, in my experience, waiting has produced anticipation. When we have to wait for something, it creates this a tension that builds up over time. When I was a kid, we used to go to this place called the Boom Site in Stillwater. Going out of Stillwater on your right-hand side, all these big, huge fire pits. Evidently, they used to have a crane that they would take wood and drop it, on a boom into the St. Croix River. My great-grandfather, James Hunter McDougall, worked the Boom Site. So we used to go there, and we would have these bonfire picnic days, and all the cousins would end up down by the river, where these sandstone cliffs. And there are freshwater artesian springs that still today, right now, are bubbling water. You can go down there and fill up your buckets. It's beautiful, cold, fresh spring water. So we would go down there, inevitably, and we would start damming the rivers, right? These little rivers of spring water. which of course is foolish, but it was fun. So we would create these little dams, and we'd build these rocks, and we'd take all the sand, and we'd pack it in there, and what would happen? The water would start to rise. When we made it wait, it like increased in volume and pressure, and tension began to build until there was a moment when the dam could no longer hold back what we had created, and it gave way, and a release happened, right? When we wait, anticipation builds. I wonder, I'm no scientist, and I've not written a book on this, but I wonder if we get joy without waiting. Think about joy in your life. The last time you experienced it, where like just burst out of you in delight. What was that if not like anticipation, waiting built up? I say sometimes you can't pass go and collect $200. You got to go all the way around. I wonder if we don't get joy, delight, those moments of euphoria and enlightenment, if we don't experience the waiting. I think it produces an environment for that. Lastly, and I'll close with this, my experience has been, and I think I find this in Scripture as well, that waiting produces intimacy. You think about Moses' life. Right? 40, 40, 40. The last 40, he's wandering around in a desert with these people trying to get to the promised land. And if you know the story, he never gets there. He hits a rock instead of speaks to the rock, and God says, you can't enter the promised land. Which, I have a question about that. That feels like it's, the punishment doesn't fit the crime. Can I get an amen on that? Does anybody else feel that way about that story? My consolation in my frustration there is at the end of Moses' life, end of Deuteronomy, God takes him up on a mountain. There's this moment, one-on-one conversation that we get a glimpse into. And God shows him, he says, look out over the mountains, and what do you see? And he begins to describe all of the land, all that God had promised to Moses and the people. And he sees the whole thing and the future, the sacred future. God shows it to him. And then he dies. And the Hebrew actually says Moses died on the mouth of God. What is that? In Moses' waiting, all the struggle, all the pain, all the agony, all the frustration with God, all those years, his last moment, his last breath was as close as a kiss with God. It's 2015, we moved into this building around Easter, and by Christmas, we were packed. We started with 150 people, or a little less than that when we moved into this building, and we had almost doubled in 9 months. And I remember a conversation with my wife. We're sitting on the couch, and there were just all these stories bubbling up. It was like things were clicking, things were happening, and I just said, what on earth have we walked into here? Like we were in Narnia, just kind of, what is happening? Story after story after story of people who were finding a home, a place that they felt like they belonged and that they could be honest with their questions and pursue God. And the good news sounded like good news again for the first time in a long time. And it was just like this swell of momentum. And I sat at Lucky's 13 that Advent writing my sermon at the bar. Because that's what you do when you don't have an office and you're a church planter. You just find a bar and you post up. You get to know people. So I got some creative juice, and I'm writing my sermon, and I remembered sitting at this bar thinking about all that had happened to lead up to that moment. And I'm recalling, all the struggle and all the wondering of, God, was this a mistake? Is it me? Am I the problem? Why isn't this growing? What is wrong? And I just started, like, tears coming down my face at the bar. In that moment, I realized I was given this gift of like, oh, you have been there with me in it, through it. My waiting was not alone. Last night at the concert, Sarah Gross wrote a new song about the people who only know what we know. And she was talking about people in your life, a small group of people who know all the things that only you know. And what happens when those people pass? And the grief and the sadness that we feel when someone who knows all the things that only I know is gone. And Sandra said, I have learned in this season and loved to know and experience God as the memory keeper, the one who has all of them, who was there for it all. And my dad passed away a couple years ago, and I was thinking about, like, not everybody knows about the Snoopy pole at the end of the dock in my diaper, but like he did, and he's gone. God is the memory keeper, keeps them all, has them all, knows them all. And in that moment at the bar, I was just like, oh man, you were there, and you remembered, and you were with me in that waiting. And it was an intimacy with God that I had not experienced. And that's the gift of waiting. You don't get that without that process, without that journey. So as we lean into Advent this season, I don't know what your waiting is. I don't know what it means for you or how long it's been. But I just want to invite you into the hard work of the spiritual life, of like letting the waiting expose those things, because it will, if you let it, if you have eyes to see and ears to hear and the courage to just stand with vulnerability and trust that God is good, and see if that doesn't create a more intimate relationship that you might have with the divine. An anticipation, a welling of joy in the arrival. And I don't know when that will come. I don't know if it will ever come. Sometimes it doesn't, but a lot of times it does. So this is Advent, friends. Let me pray. I invite you to a moment of silence, and then we'll make our way to the table. God, as we spend just a bit of quiet and listening, stillness, as we slow down a little bit, I pray that you might be present, near us, in whatever waiting we bring this morning. And in that waiting, that we would find you kind and compassionate, gentle, loving, firm, but kind. So, Spirit, do your work in us, we pray. In just a moment, we want to invite you to celebrate the Lord's table together with us. A reminder, this is an open table at Awaken, so if you want it, it's yours. We'll invite you down the side aisles. When you get to the ends, you'll find there's 2 stations on each side. At each of those stations, there's gluten-free bread, there's red wine, and there's white grape juice. So I invite you to take a piece of the bread, dip it in the cup, and as you do, know that the body of Christ is broken for you, the blood of Christ is shed for you. If it's easier for you to receive communion where you are, my good friend Jenna would be happy to serve you where you are, but let's make our way to the table together.
There's a joy that's waiting to be born again. We wait for you in the darkness, in the cold. It still rings true, buried deep within our souls is the unrelenting longing for a love we cannot lose. We wait for you. We wait for you. On this path of sorrow, along this winding road, I find myself traveling where sorrow is unknown. And chaos calls to chaos, below the water falls, and all your waves crash over me and crush beneath it all. But I know you remain the same, even in my waiting. Sometimes I often wonder if you were to let me down. Why does it seem I walk alone where trouble finds me out? But sorrow is my company, I fix my eyes on you. And soon again I'll praise your name and feel my soul renewed. But I know you remain the same, even in my waiting. Oh, I know you remain the same, even in my waiting. A traveler never reaches that sacred place alone. Allow you to always guide you along the narrow road. So steadily I keep my stride through every bright and fold. Although my flesh will falter, my hope is in the Lord. But I know you remain the same, even in my waiting. Oh, I know you remain the same, even in my waiting. Oh, I know you remain the same, even in my waiting. Oh, I know you remain the same, even in my waiting. Even in my waiting.
I invite you to stand with us as we sing one last carol to close our service this morning. Look now for glad and golden hours come swiftly on the wing. Oh, rest beside the weary road and hear the angels sing. For lo, the days are hastening on, by prophet parts foretold. When with the ever-circling ease come round the ancient goal, when the new heaven and earth shall own the Prince of Peace their King, and the whole world sends back the song which now the angels sing. Yet with the woes of sin and strife, the world has suffered long. Beneath the angels' reign of old, 2,000 years along. And man at war with man, it's not the love song which they bring. Oh, hush the noisy men of strife and hear the angels sing. And man at war with man hears not the love song which they bring. Oh, hush the noisy man of strife and hear the angels sing.
Friends, as you go this morning, we often close our gatherings with a blessing, a benediction of sorts, and that usually is the same thing every week. This Advent, I've tried to find something new for each week, and this week I want to leave you with a blessing from a woman named Jan Richardson. She's a poet and writer, and she writes this, a blessing for waiting. Who wait for the night to end, who wait for the night to begin, bless them. Who wait in the hospital room, who wait in the cell, who wait in prayer, who wait for news, who wait for the phone call, who wait for a word, who wait for a job, a house, a child. Bless them. Who wait for the one who will come home, who wait for the one who will not come home. Bless them. Who wait with fear, who wait with joy, with peace, with rage, for the end, for the beginning, who wait alone, who wait together, bless them. Who wait without knowing what they wait for or why, bless them. Who wait when they should not wait, who wait when they should be in motion, who wait when they need to rise, who wait when they need to set out, bless them. Who wait for the end of waiting, who wait for the fullness of time, who wait emptied and open and ready, who wait for you. Bless us. Grace and peace, my friends. Happy Advent. Check out the Advent Market. We'll see you next week.